Lead investigator Elias Thorne dragged his thumb across the spacebar of the editing console. The monitor flickered, casting a pale, bluish light across his exhausted face. He leaned back in his squeaking leather chair, rubbing his eyes. On the screen, the local evening news broadcast looped for the fourth consecutive time.
I woke up and the bed was just cold. Please, if anyone has seen Evelyn, I just want my wife back.
Thorne hit the spacebar again. The man on the monitor froze mid-sob. Arthur Vance, 55 years old, former industrial butcher turned rideshare driver, now a grieving husband pleading with the citizens of Metro Valley, Oregon. It played as a convincing performance, a desperate man begging for the safe return of his 51-year-old wife. There was just one mechanical impossibility. The Pinnacle isn't merely an apartment complex. It's a 20-story concrete fortress engineered for high-end clients demanding absolute privacy. 96 internal cameras monitor the hallways. Over 1,000 exterior lenses cover the manicured grounds, the underground parking garage, and the perimeter fencing. Keycard access is required for every single elevator bank. A digital cage. Thorne tapped a pen against the edge of his metal desk. As he brought up a grid of security feeds on his secondary display. July 5th. 2 a.m. Evelyn Vance allegedly walked out of apartment 802 wearing nothing but a brown slip. Yet, out of 6,000 hours of high-definition video analyzed by Metro Valley detectives, she never appeared in a single frame. Nobody exited through the grand lobby. No shadows slipped down the emergency stairwells. The cameras faithfully recorded a mail carrier at dawn, a food delivery driver at noon, and a stray cat near the industrial dumpsters. Zero trace of Evelyn. She didn't leave the building. Thorne pushed his chair back, the casters grinding loudly against the linoleum floor. He walked over to the precinct's corkboard, pinning up a glossy photograph of the Vance residence. When first responders breached Unit 802, they found nothing amiss. Or the sharp scent of lavender air freshener masked the stale apartment air. Vacuum lines ran perfectly parallel across the beige living room carpet. The kitchen sink gleamed under fluorescent lights, smelling faintly of lemon dish soap. Investigators found no signs of forced entry. The heavy brass deadbolt had been engaged from the inside. It was a pristine environment, almost sterile. Technicians dusted for prints. They found them exactly where they belonged, on the stainless steel refrigerator handle, the television remote, the master bathroom mirror. No signs of a struggle, no overturned dining chairs, no scuff marks marring the crisp white baseboards. Thorne clicked his computer mouse, bringing up the initial emergency dispatch recording, the call Arthur made 36 hours after the supposed disappearance.
Yes, dispatcher. It's about my wife. She's been gone a day and a half. Left without her purse. Just in her nightgown. I thought she went to a friend's, but...
A full day and a half. 36 hours before dialing 3 digits for help. Thorne stared at the architectural floor plans of the Pinnacle spread across his desk. An adult woman doesn't simply evaporate into thin air. She doesn't bypass a state-of-the-art surveillance grid wearing sleepwear without triggering a single motion sensor. He picked up a blue marker, uncapping it with a sharp click. He traced the schematic lines of the 8th floor, down the hallway, past the elevator shafts, around the trash chutes, Everything checked out perfectly. The physical space offered zero answers. Then his gaze drifted toward a different stack of paperwork resting on the far corner of his desk. Not police reports, not witness statements, municipal utility logs. Thorne pulled the top sheet toward him. His thumb brushed over a specific line item printed by the Metro Valley Water District. He squinted at the digits registered to apartment 802 during the exact hours Evelyn supposedly vanished. The anomaly wasn't hidden in the video feeds. It was in the pipes. The pipes, specifically the high-pressure, commercial-grade copper plumbing routing municipal water into the 8th floor of the Pinnacle. Thorne tapped his knuckles against the edge of his desk, the rhythmic metallic clink grounding him in the quiet precinct. He wasn't staring at a coroner's report. With no body recovered, a traditional forensic examination remained an absolute impossibility. Instead, the autopsy had to be performed on the building's infrastructure itself. He physically snapped open a fresh manila folder. Inside lay a stack of dot matrix printouts, the raw utility telemetry for Unit 802. Every luxury condominium in the complex utilized independent smart-metered water tracking. Thorne traced his index finger down the column of time stamps, his nails scraping lightly against the coarse paper. July 4th, the evening of the disappearance. Standard consumption, minor spikes indicating a dishwasher cycle, maybe a brief shower. Then came the dead of night. At exactly 2:14 in the morning, the meter registered a violent surge. Thorne leaned closer to the monitor. The graphing software displayed a jagged, sustained plateau. For the next several hours, while the rest of Metro Valley slept, Arthur Vance's apartment consumed an astronomical volume of municipal tap water. 2,000 gallons, roughly 8 tons of fluid. That isn't a forgotten faucet, it is an industrial-scale purge. A residential water heater holds 50 gallons. To cycle 2,000 gallons means running the taps on maximum pressure continuously until the hot water is entirely depleted, and then letting the freezing mains flow uninterrupted. Thorne pulled a scratch pad across his desk. He scribbled the math. Filling a standard luxury bathtub takes roughly 60 gallons. Someone in Unit 802 had essentially filled and drained that porcelain basin over 30 consecutive times in complete silence. Why? Water functions as the universal solvent. In forensic terms, a high-volume continuous flow acts as a dilution tactic. It flushes evidence, it breaks down chemical agents, it carries away biological material through the drainage grates, past the S-traps, and straight into the building's central subterranean wastewater matrix. Arthur Vance claimed he slept through the night. He stated Evelyn simply wandered off. Yet the smart meter recorded an impossible deluge, stopping abruptly just before dawn. Thorne reached for his desk phone. He unhooked the receiver, the coiled cord stretching across the paperwork, and jammed his thumb onto the speakerphone button. The line connected with a sharp electronic beep.
Yeah, Detective. Got the logs right here. The meter shows a massive, sustained spike. I mean, it's off the charts for a residential unit. Like someone left the taps running full blast for hours in the middle of the night. It didn't taper off, neither. Just a hard open, then a hard shut at 5 a.m.
A hard open, a hard shut, calculated, mechanical. Thorne disconnected the call. The silence of his office rushed back in. He picked up the glossy crime scene photographs of the Vance master bathroom. First responders had noted the spotless porcelain, the gleaming chrome fixtures, the overpowering scent of artificial lavender. At the time, it seemed like the work of an aggressive housekeeper. Now the sterility took on a surgical edge. If a crime occurred in that room, the physical evidence had been systematically liquidated, flushed down a 4-inch PVC pipe. The investigation was no longer a missing persons case. It had evolved into a recovery operation. But a high-rise like the Pinnacle wasn't a standard suburban home. Its plumbing network was a labyrinth of interconnected disposal lines feeding into a massive, closed-loop septic filtration tank buried beneath layers of reinforced concrete. Accessing it wouldn't just require a warrant, it would demand tearing the building's nervous system apart. And to secure that kind of unprecedented judicial authorization, Thorne needed more than a bizarre water bill. He needed to shatter the grieving husband's flawless facade. Shattering that facade proved to be a masterclass in bureaucratic masonry. Thorne needed a crowbar to crack Arthur Vance's composure. What he got instead was an 18-day tutorial in administrative gridlock. A massive, unexplainable water surge wasn't probable cause, not according to the magistrates of Metro Valley. Requesting a municipal works crew to excavate the subterranean septic filtration system of a luxury high-rise based entirely on a utility bill and a detective's gut instinct was swiftly rejected. The Honourable Judge Mercer called the petition financially reckless, denied. The investigation ground to a suffocating halt, time stretched, days blurred into a continuous loop of dead ends and lukewarm coffee. Thorne rubbed the heels of his hands deep into his tired eyes. The precinct hummed with the ambient noise of ringing phones and clacking keyboards. His desk was a graveyard of empty styrofoam cups and stacked external hard drives. 6,000 hours. That was the total volume of digital security footage extracted from the Pinnacle's servers. Detectives watched hallways. They scrutinized lobby rotations. They tracked the blinking headlights of every single vehicle entering and exiting the complex. 0 anomalies. Evelyn Vance remained a ghost in the machine. Then a crack in the armor seemed to appear. A false lead surfaced regarding the subterranean parking level. A maintenance contractor mentioned an old, unmonitored service corridor tucked behind the industrial HVAC units. It was a blind spot, a narrow concrete artery leading straight to a service alley on 4th Street. Did Evelyn slip through there? Was there an accomplice idling in the damp shadows? It fit the narrative of a woman escaping her life. Arthur Vance leaned into the theory immediately. During his voluntary interviews, the husband was dangerously accommodating. He never raised his voice. He offered bank statements, character references, and a polished demeanor that left seasoned interrogators grasping at smoke. Thorne leaned forward, hitting the plastic play button on his digital dictaphone. The tiny speaker crackled, filling his cubicle with the compressed audio of yesterday's session.
Detective, I've answered this. She must have slipped out through the basement. Now, are we finished? I have errands to run.
Errands. His wife was missing for nearly 3 weeks, and Arthur Vance was politely requesting to leave the precinct so he could pick up dry cleaning. Thorne stopped the recording. The abrupt silence felt heavy. He looked at the whiteboards lining the squad room. They were covered in timelines, photographs, and red question marks. Arthur's story remained airtight. No physical weapon, No traces of biological evidence, no witnesses. The Metro Valley Prosecutor's Office began making noise about reassigning resources. You cannot charge a man with murder when the victim might simply be sitting on a beach somewhere. The justice system required a body. It demanded definitive proof of a crime. Arthur knew this. He operated with the quiet confidence of a man holding a royal flush. He gave television interviews, playing the tragic victim for the local news cameras. He even offered a cash reward for information leading to his wife's return. It was an insulated, flawless performance. But Thorne couldn't let go of the pipes. 2,000 gallons didn't evaporate into the ether. It went down the drain. And if Evelyn Vance went down with it, the answers were currently submerged beneath tons of concrete and waste. Thorne picked up a red marker, uncapping it with a sharp snap. He didn't need to ask the judge again. He needed leverage. He needed an operation so meticulously planned that by the time Arthur Vance realized the trap was sprung, it would be far too late to run. The trap had already closed around the Pinnacle's subterranean foundation. Thorne's red marker had sketched out a logistical nightmare, an operation so massive it bypassed standard judicial roadblocks by classifying the effort as an emergency municipal health hazard inspection. 38 commercial sanitation trucks idled in the damp service alley behind the luxury complex. Their diesel engines thrummed for 25 agonizing hours while public works crews systematically drained the building's central septic matrix. They pumped out thousands of gallons of waste, filtering every single drop through heavy-duty industrial mesh under the glare of portable floodlights. Arthur Vance sat across the metal table in Interrogation Room B, entirely unaware of the industrial fleet mobilized outside. And the digital clock on the grey cinder-block wall ticked, a sharp, rhythmic click that echoed in the small space. Thorne let the quiet stretch. He sat perfectly still, studying the man opposite him. Arthur wore a freshly pressed navy polo shirt. His hands rested calmly on his lap. He projected the tired patience of a grieving citizen, indulging the local authorities for the 10th time. A single manila folder sat between them on the scratched steel surface. Detectives usually rely on tearful confessions or recovered murder weapons. Thorne had neither. What he possessed was a forensic miracle dragged from the darkness of a municipal sewer. Filtration crews hadn't found an intact body. Instead, they discovered microscopic tissue anomalies. DNA fragments perfectly matched Evelyn Vance, trapped within the microscopic grooves of a PVC junction pipe, or a pipe that routed directly and exclusively from the drainage line of apartment 802. Thorne unclasped his hands. He flipped open the heavy folder. Inside lay a stack of laboratory printouts from the sanitation analysis alongside a sealed, transparent biohazard evidence bag containing a tiny, chemical-stained swab. He didn't raise his voice. Leveling a single accusation was unnecessary. Thorne simply began to read the timeline aloud in a flat, clinical monotone. 2,000 gallons of water registered on July 5th. 38 municipal pumping trucks requisitioned on July 23rd. 25 hours of continuous forensic sifting through human refuse. Arthur's posture shifted. The relaxed, confident tilt of his shoulders vanished. His eyes darted toward the folder. Eye pupils dilated rapidly beneath the harsh, overhead fluorescent lights. Thorne continued detailing the precise biological reality. Industrial solvents and bleach degrade physical material, but they cannot erase the molecular signature of human tissue embedded in plumbing residue. The water meter surge wasn't a mechanical glitch. It was the documented soundtrack of a man attempting to systematically flush his wife into oblivion. The investigator picked up the sealed biohazard bag. He slid it slowly across the scratched metal table, the rigid plastic scraping loudly against the steel, stopping inches from the suspect's folded hands.
That's impossible. The chemicals I used, it should have been gone. Forever.
Complete silence returned to the room. Thorne leaned back, the springs of his chair groaning slightly. He watched the realization settle over the sterile space. Arthur Vance had spent nearly 3 weeks playing the heartbroken widower on television, utterly confident in his meticulous disposal method. He firmly believed the sheer volume of municipal water and the architectural complexity of a high-rise's plumbing network had granted him perfect immunity. He underestimated the stubborn, exhaustive persistence of Metro Valley's investigative unit. The husband stared at the tiny swab inside the plastic bag. His jaw trembled. He looked up at the two-way mirror on the wall, then down at his own perfectly manicured fingernails. The polished cooperative facade fractured into pieces. No lawyer was requested. Sudden outbursts of indignant denial never materialized. There were only the rapid, shallow breaths of a man who suddenly realized his flawless crime had been filtered out of the dark. Thorne pulled a fresh legal pad from his briefcase, setting it deliberately on the table. The fresh legal pad remained completely blank for exactly 3 minutes. Thorne waited, his pen hovering inches above the yellow paper, listening to the suspect's shallow breathing fill the sterile interrogation box. Silence operated as a tactical weapon. The crushing weight of microscopic DNA evidence had finally fractured the husband's engineered facade. When the confession broke, it didn't arrive as a tearful apology. Arthur Vance offered no passionate excuse. Instead, he delivered a mechanical recitation of logistics. Thorne closed the master case file with a heavy thud, the sound echoing through the empty squad room. He stared at the name printed on the tab. Evelyn Vance. Her final night was defined by calculated quiet. The reconstruction painted a stark, clinical picture of domestic betrayal. To Arthur had crushed a potent combination of sedatives into a glass of warm milk, handing it to his wife before bed. She drank it without suspicion. Evelyn fell asleep beneath their heavy duvet, entirely unaware of the plastic tarps already staged in the adjacent room. Hours passed. The sprawling city of Metro Valley shut down for the night. Arthur woke up in the dark. Slipping out of bed, he left his wife paralyzed by the chemicals. Moving with practiced efficiency, he carried her into the master bathroom, the heavy brass deadbolt locked with a sharp click. Then he turned on the faucets. For the next 3 hours, the former industrial butcher dismantled 51 years of human history under the harsh glare of vanity lights. He relied on the relentless pressure of municipal plumbing to wash away his financial problems. Sole ownership of 2 luxury condominiums and a drained joint bank account were the ultimate prizes. Working with absolute confidence, Arthur trusted the concrete labyrinth of the Pinnacle to hide his sins forever. Thorne reached across his desk, depressing the heavy plastic playback button on the precinct's digital audio deck.
She was asleep. It was quiet. It just had to be done. I thought water washed everything away.
He truly believed the pipes offered absolute absolution. The Metro Valley judicial system disagreed. During the swift 7-day trial, prosecutors presented the utility logs alongside the microscopic tissue swabs recovered from the septic matrix. The defense attorney attempted to argue a sudden crime of passion. However, the premeditated purchase of industrial solvents and the heavily sedated milk shattered that legal angle. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning to the courtroom. Arthur Vance received a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Justice was secured. Yet a distinct unease settled over the investigative team long after the judge's gavel fell. The lingering disturbance wasn't found in the swift verdict. It hid in the mundane, everyday details of the killer's life following the murder. For 18 days before his arrest, Arthur had slept soundly in the exact same bed where he poisoned his wife. Morning routines continued unabated as he used the same pristine master bathroom to shave his face. The killer brushed his teeth over the very porcelain sink where he had methodically erased her existence. Guilt never compelled him to scrub the drains. He simply paid his exorbitant Metro Valley water bill on time, filed the paper receipt in a neatly labeled manila folder, and patiently waited for the police to stop asking questions.